The point really is that Nigeria is a nation that is not working, and everybody can appreciate that it's not working. The point of takeoff is, if it's not working, what do you do? How do you really want a country?
Speaking about that, the history of this country is something that, year on year, we'll take a look at things and see, in a manner of taking stock, where we are coming from. But then for quite a number of people, they think that we didn't have a properly defined manual in terms of where we're coming from. As such, we seem to be wobbling, trying to achieve the big target, such that everybody kind of did thumb their chest and say, for this green white flag, I stand. Do you share the same view that we don't seem to have it properly cut out from the start?
Well, when people look at taking a discussion on Nigeria, everybody will look at it from their own perspective. And some people will say, let's go all the way back to when the British came. Even some people say, no, let's go beyond when the British came, and so on and so forth. But the point really is that Nigeria is a nation that is not working, and everybody can appreciate that it's not working. The point of takeoff is, if it's not working, what do you do? How do you really want a country? Do you want a federation? Do you want what we have today, which is a unitary government?
Unitary?
Yes, we have a unitary government that is
even though it's a federation system, according to our laws,
that is covered by something called a federation, but we know that that is not true. Essentially, if you're a federation, that means that you're all contributing. But what we have is not a federation in which everybody is contributing. We have a federation in which a few people are contributing and the rest are sharing federation where we just sit down there to share. And that's why you have talks about devolution of power, restructuring, and so on and so forth. And I can tell you this to bring it very clear. Sometime in the, I think in the 7th Senate, either in the 7th or the 8th Senate, we had a debate on devolution of power in order to amend the Constitution. And while we were having that discussion, we also had a vote. And the vote for devolution of power failed. And it failed principally because some of our colleagues from certain sections of the country felt that they will lose if devolution of power goes on. And after that vote, I had a discussion with a former governor of one of the northern states. And I sat with him and I said to him, I really need to know why you're so much against devolution of power, because it will also affect you positively. And he told me, he said, every month I have asked governor, we used to come to Abuja to get allocation of funds from the federal purse. If that is removed, my state will collapse because we cannot generate what will give us the funding to be able to run the state. And that gives you an idea of how the federation is run. I didn't blame him. What I blamed was the fact that we had, by either choice or happenstance, found ourselves in a situation in which nobody thinks outside the box. Nobody tries to say, how do I wean myself from this with apologies to Ekweremadu, he called it a feeding bottle structure.
Senator, is it a function of the system of government we are running, or it's just the way we are? Because, I mean, you would also recall, as many would, that in the First Republic, the different regions were economically vibrant, and they didn't have to depend on the center for anything.
Well, sometimes you can do something you think is good, and you will end up taking it to a situation where it is no longer viable. At the point at which General Gowon needed to win the war and set things, that's when they created the 12-state structure. Subsequently, after the 12-state structure, because each of those states was still viable on its own, then every other military regime that came tried to appease maybe constituents, elements within the country and all that, and continue dividing and creating entities. And now we find that entities are just not viable. And so each entity now has to wait to go cap in hand every month to be able to have sustenance to service the bloated structures. It's not that it can't work. It is that when you get used, and that's why we use the simile of feeding bottle. When you get used to just living off something, then you are no longer motivated, let's just say, to work for yourself. And we can see this very clearly. Niger State in Nigeria is bigger than the whole of almost Western Europe, Niger State. Yet, just a small part of Western Europe called Netherlands supply milk to the whole world, and you're able to survive. Niger State cannot on its own survive. It has to come here every month. So you ask yourself, with all this landmass, with every other thing that is with you, why are you not focusing on your strength?
That the views of that former governor, it's important, because it's more like a window into the mindset. Because we also spoke to some top politicians, off the camera, and they thought, the way the South or some part of the South have gone about this is part of the problem. Because they feel if you stay in the South and you have meetings in one or two states or two cities, and you don't approach the North, because in politics you know about lobbying, you don't approach them and explain some of this in such that they can see the reasons, automatically people will shut it down. Don't they have a point when they say that?
Yeah, they do. I was just giving you the reasons why you will find that efforts being made to change our way of life hits a brick wall. Another thing is this. It's also in the nature of people not to take the hard decisions. It's also in our nature to take the easy way out. And the easy way out is do nothing. Stay on what you have. Drum up support from your people. Because anytime you try to catch somebody, say, oh, his people will come out, so drum up support and all that, and then blame the other person for your inability to do the right thing. So if anybody says that you don't have a comparative advantage in this country at a particular zone, you will not be correct.
The different federating units, Editor, in Nigeria, the states in particular, there is hardly any state in Nigeria that cannot, on its own, potentially stand well. I mean, economically vibrant. Many people have postulated them. I saw a report by a consulting firm that identifies and itemizes the mineral resources, mineral deposits, and agricultural capacity of every state in Nigeria. Is it that, if this is true, is it that the state governors are incompetent, or they are not looking in the right way, or there is some federal government, power that is holding them down?
Well, I guess it's a combination of all manners of things. And I would say that in looking at it, you can't say, oh, these people are... I'm just saying this.
Yeah.
Taking the hard decision, it's always very difficult for people to do. So what they want to do is always to take the easy way out. What is the easy way out? Mm-hmm. You ask yourself. So we sell as much oil as possible, then we come out, and then we share, and then we just go. That is the easy way out. The hard way is for you to look at your place and ask yourself, what do we do within this this area that we find ourselves? How do we... you just mentioned the time we had different regions. Now, at a particular point, the Eastern region was the fastest growing economy. And it was based on one simple thing, on palm oil. Now, at that time that it was growing fast and it was on palm oil, the Malaysians came and they took our palm kernels and fruits and went back to Malaysia, and they have turned it into being the leading exporter. And we now have to, anybody who is an importer, a manufacturer here that needs to use palm oil as its base for production has to import it from outside. So you ask yourself, from one regional government, I think the governments there now are about 11 or so, they should have been more efficient. But rather, I guess the breaking up of all that has made them more inefficient. And that is part of the bane of our economy today.
But Senator, if that's the view that they have, still on that perception that, well, if they don't get revenue from the center, the state will collapse. But there's also been several analyses and several reports that in years to come, oil will not be as viable as it is today. So why don't they see that?
Well, I think that's a question I can answer.
Because if political leaders
is a question that anybody who is a head of an entity called a state will have to answer. You have to ask yourself, you have a maximum of 8 years. How do you impact on it to change the narrative in your state? And I continue to say, maybe our leadership recruitment mechanism is faulty, and therefore we end up always recruiting leaders.
So they say politicians don't allow younger ones to come on board, because at the time too, the average age was really low, but now...
There is nothing that says younger people are better leaders, because we can take a census of the state governors we have today. The younger ones are the ones that everybody has an issue with.
No, but the country had younger leaders at the time. They were the ones who led the country.
That is the point. We really find this very, very interesting that our leaders at that time were very young. They were in their 30s. They were, very idealistic and all that. So what is it that has happened to our leaders of today? Must be something.
Sorry, before we go to just a minute. We have 4 minutes. Hold on. You'll be here. You have him here, but Kaide, go ahead and put your questions in.
All right, thank you, Chamberlain. Now, Senator Abaribe, speaking of future leaders, now one of them on social media who is watching you made a comment much earlier, and he said that if a senator, I'll just paraphrase what he said, he says that if a senator in Nigeria says things are not exactly working as they ought to, then that is a big deal. Now, you have talked about, the syndrome of going cap in hand, to the federal government. You have said this is perhaps a unitary government that is cloaked in a federal, government ideal. So I think the person is saying that you are in a position to make laws, to make things work. So I think the question for you, or from that person, is what are you doing to ensure that things work as a senator?
Yeah, my duty as a senator is that we make laws. We oversight the laws that are already made, and for where we make appropriation, we look into what they do. So when you're talking about the question of whether that is the question that comes to the heart of what I had said before, which has to do with devolution of power, and which some of our leaders all over the country today are saying that we must have a roundtable conference to talk about restructuring. And I will just give a very small illustration to show this. If there is an aspect of insecurity within your state as a governor, you will invite the commissioner of police, you will invite whatever military formation is within your state, you will invite the head of that, you invite the director officers. You can sit with them and you can say, okay, this is where I have this report and this is what you need to do, and then you must quickly go and arrest this situation. They will say yes. They will thank you, salute you, and walk away, and go and send a signal to their headquarters in Abuja. And so the police commissioner sends a signal to his headquarters in Abuja. Then he waits for the man in Abuja to tell him to approve or not approve what to do. Meanwhile, time is going. Sometimes they may, if it's a governor that somebody in Abuja doesn't like, they will say, don't mind him, let him go ahead with all the problems he's having, and nothing gets done. And so, you're in a federation in which a state governor is supposed to be the chief security officer without the ability to order the security agencies within his state to tackle menace. So what do you do? That is not a federation. That is nothing but a unitary system covered with a veneer of a federation.
Well, this is a conversation that will keep going on. We'll keep having it because we can't afford to not fix the country or get it right. Because your future, the young ones, even though Sandra says there's no
free lunch.
No, I'm asking you. I've challenged the young ones to say, in what way are they better?
All right. For example, young persons who are succeeding in business.
No, I'm not saying that young people are not doing well. Please get me right. I said young people, they're doing marvelously well. We have young Nigerians, but the question of knowing what to do has nothing to do with age.
Let's tell ourselves the truth now, at least for once. See, I'm going to speak and a lot of people will think I'm speaking like a biafra, but no, I want us to reason like analytical human beings. The fact is the division of Nigeria with all the indications on ground so far is inevitable. The division of Nigeria is inevitable without implementing the regional system of government. Okay, let's look at the indicators. Number one, the fact is, the issue of national insecurity at the moment happens to be majorly a northern problem, right? You quite agree with me on that. And in that regards now, any government of the day, any president at the moment that is not of the northern descent or northern origin that tries to fix that, if he's hoping to come for a second tenure, I bet you he can't succeed in that. You quite agree with me, right? And this is what I mean by that. Okay. In addressing, considering bringing into view now what happened recently in Benue, just the normal issue of farmers herders clashes as they call it, right? Okay. In fixing this kind of situations, now forget about the deployment of military, police, whatever the president coming to visit. You quite agree with me that that doesn't solve anything and is not going to solve anything. The only thing that will solve that to some certain extent is we having a situation where there is ranches established for herders, right? That is to say, the herders must be in tune with changing times. Because you quite agree with me, there is no developed country you go to in this world today that you'll find a situation where animals wander all around. There is none. You can never find any developed country of that nature. But in so doing now, if the president of the day tries to enforce that, it's going to be rejected by the northerners to some certain extent, evidently clear even in the past, right? Considering the fact that these people are citizens or whatever, they are nomadic in nature, right? That has always been the conversation. They are nomadic in nature. So they move from places to places. And the fact is, I don't know where we're actually getting this. Okay, if you say you are nomadic in nature, how do you expect the government to account for you? Have you ever seen a country where you have citizens being nomadic in nature and the government can account for them and make budget for? So you see, the fact is, the herders must be in tune with changing times, but they are not ready for that. And even the politicians are not ready to have that conversation. Let's look at the issue of dialogue. We need to preach dialogue. We need to be accommodating. There's enough to share, according to Tinubu. But looking at it, you quite agree with me that as far as this life, this nature is concerned now, people have metamorphosized over time, which is the fact that people no more just live because they want to embrace each other in love and peace and harmony. There are two things that guide and regulate the conduct of humanity. One, adequate enforcement of the law. Even in developed countries. That is to say, you know that when you do this, this will happen. You must reap for it. You will go in for it. That makes people behave to some certain extent. Another thing that guides people's conduct is the fact that they must be subordinate and superior. Right? That is to say, in anywhere I live for there to be peace, is either they must be, you are the senior, I am the junior. So you know that when you try me, I will finish you, and me that knows that you are more powerful than me, I will not try you. Those are the things that keeps people in check. But if you think that we're going to sit down and be, in as much as we desire one Nigeria, we want to preach and we want to be all accommodating, we believe we're stronger together, but it's not the preaching of peace and love or whatever that keeps people together. These two indications are what keeps people together. And you quite agree with me to some certain extent, the two is missing. There is no adequate enforcement of laws. We are under-policed. Even the armed forces is overwhelmed, and a lot of other things. So what will keep people in check? So what we are fighting for at the moment is a situation where who is more powerful? Is it me, the Fulani man? Is it me, the Yoruba man? Is it me, the Igbo man? Or is it me, the Hausa man? The fact is, that must be sorted out. When it's sorted out, now everybody will know his position and people now will just decide to keep quiet and whatever. Looking at it, when you now introduce our religious extremism in all aspects as well, that is evident in the country. You have a lot of radical Muslims, radical Christians. We're not ready to tolerate each other. The only thing that will make us tolerate each other, let's tell ourselves the truth, is the full implementation of the law and the adequate protection of the vulnerable. That is just it. And all these things are missing. So how do you tell me we are not going to divide? And the fact is, looking at it now, Tinubu will not dare go that way. Right? Because by the time he tries to introduce that, okay, there must be establishment of ranches to curtail the free movement of the Fulanis, you quite agree with me that he is going to lose a lot of... the fact is, he's already losing at the same time as far as the North is concerned at the moment. And that is what will even bring the division closer in that regards. In the sense that Tinubu doesn't look like somebody that is ready to let go of the fact that this 8 years is his birthright. And at the same time, the Northerners are not ready to give it to him. So when you have a clash of the titans, Abi, that is what I refer to this 2027. Forget about this defection. Clash of the titans is going to definitely give birth to something. So with all these indications on ground, my brother, the issue of one Nigeria, we are going to get better, will remain nothing but a delusion, seriously. We're going to talk more in this regards. I will drop more in this regard.